Welcome to The Problematic Gaze with me, Dr. Lee Arnott.
And me, Dave Moor.
Each episode, lovely gazers, will take a piece of pop culture from the last 60 years and examine it through the problematic lens and ask ourselves the question, could you get away with it today? And if not, why not? And what does that say about society and culture then and now?
And before we take a deep dive into our chosen topic, we'll look at the news events of the day, we'll look at the TV and film landscape, and we'll look at the pop charts, just to put our chosen topic into context. How are you, Lee?
Well, life is a cabaret, love. Life is a cabaret. We've got to get out there and give it some jip, haven't we? I'm well, darling. Are you?
I'm sat alone in my room.
The podcast gods have split us up again because we've been naughty. We've been put into separate rooms.
We've been quarantined. You're live from PG Towers, and I'm holed up in PG Manor in the country. How's life at PG Towers?
Bustling non-stop. How's the manor?
The manor's fine. I've opened up all the wings for summer now, although we've had torrential rain. But I'm hoping the sun's going to peek out at some point, because let's face it, we need a bit of sunshine in our lives, don't we?
We do. Well, we've got each other, love, haven't we?
Got each other.
I'm just looking at my arms and I've got some really weird bruises on them. Looks like I've been battered. I don't know if you can see. Look.
Well, you are in that there London. Who knows what you might get up to in the comfort of your own home.
Also of a certain age where I bruise like a peach, love, clearly.
Nothing much has been going on here. It was the other half's birthday, so we had people round, had a few bottles of champers. Did my usual trick of bringing out the good stuff for a couple of bottles, and then when everyone was suitably razzed up, just went for the cheap bottles of Prosecco and poured the fizz out. Wait until they're out of focus, then they don't even know what they're drinking.
Get the cheap stuff out after they're all razzed up. Perfect.
So, hello gazers, how are you all? We've had some nice responses to our other episodes in our Pride Month special, and this is the final week for our Pride Month special. So, what are we going to be looking at today, Lee?
We're looking at an iconic piece of film, quite frankly, as we turn our gaze to 1931 Berlin and we open the doors of the Kit Kat Club for Cabaret. What's your relationship with Cabaret, Dave?
I love Cabaret. It's right up my Strasse.
See what you did there?
Yes, that's as far as my German goes, apart from Schwarzwald, which means Black Forest. That's the only thing I can say. Crashing on. Who knows why Cabaret calls out to us gays and draws us in? Is it the persecution, the rising fear of fascism and resistance that floats our boat? What do you think?
I think it might be the song and the dances and the eyelashes, quite frankly. Yes, I haven't seen the Cabaret for years and years. And the first time I saw it was actually in GCSE history when we were shown it as part of our exploration of the rise of fascism in Germany. That's the first time I saw it and I was like, wow, let me be Sally Bowles, please.
Yeah, less of the fascism, please. More of Liza Minelli.
Yeah, although, as we'll discuss, I did find her a teensy bit annoying in the first half of the film this time. But we'll get on to that, but she's still fabulous.
She is.
So, Cabaret was released on June the 1st, 1972 in the UK. And all that being said, should we cross over to the news desk, see what was happening in the UK at the time?
Let's do it. So, 1972, what was going on in the news, Lee?
Well, on the 9th of January, the National Union of Mine Workers holds a strike ballot in which 58.8% vote in favour of industrial action. Coal miners begin a strike which will last for 7 weeks, including picketing of the Saltley Coke depot of Birmingham. It's interesting, I was reading that at this point, and well until the 80s, the miners have a lot of public sympathy and there's a lot of support for their strikes, as we see in the 80s as well. There's only Thatcher will crush them, obviously. But it's another bit of a rocky year this year in terms of strikes and stuff.
It certainly is, because on the 9th of February, a state of emergency is declared by the Prime Minister as a result of the miners' strike. Later in the year, on the 28th of July, a strike by thousands of dockers leads to the government announcing a second state of emergency on August the 4th. So, panic buttons being well and truly pressed here.
Panic buttons are go-go, let me tell you. Ted Heath is the Prime Minister at this point, and he calls more state of emergencies in these 3 years than at any point in British history, including the Second World War. Just like panic.
So why was it this state of flux around about this time? Was it just the government treating the workers so shoddily, or what was it?
It's a lot of combination of factors. First of all, union membership is the highest it's ever been in British history at this point. It's a slow decline from this point on, but everybody is in a union and the unions are still able to command a lot of power. Inflation has been going out of control, so wages aren't rising in line with inflation. The usual stuff, basically. So we get a lot of industrial action around this time and a lot of days lost to strike. But it's interesting because British car production peaks in this year at just under 2 million units, despite the regular strikes. And what they've actually found relatively recently is that, like the 3-day week and stuff like that, is that productivity didn't go down at all, which suggests that the working practices were really inefficient because everybody could get all their stuff done in 3 days as opposed to 5 days. So although there's all these strikes going on, the country's productivity doesn't actually change that much, which is a weird little thing. On the 22nd of February, the IRA bombs Aldershot Barracks. And this was a real symbolic moment because the Aldershot Barracks was one of the army's big headquarters on mainland Britain. So to actually be able to bomb this was a real shock. And in July that year, we're going to have Bloody Friday, when 9 people die and over 100 are injured in a series of IRA explosions in Belfast city centre. So 1972 is the worst year, the most violent year of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It's grim.
And you know why we were all hearing this news as little children, even though we weren't born yet?
Where was that, Dave?
News Round, BBC television children's programme. Very long running, and it was first broadcast this year on the 4th of April. Do you remember that? John Craven featured very heavily in our childhoods.
Yes, he did. John Craven was so much of a sex symbol that he used to get more fan mail than Duran Duran at the BBC at the height of his popularity. He was the face, wasn't he? You could trust John Craven, apart from when he's doing terrible Asian impressions in that panto we watched.
Yes, do you remember?
Yeah.
Gazers, if you want a hideous flashback to the 1980s, light entertainment in all its glory, please refer back to our Aladdin and the 40 Thieves panto episode that we did of the festive period.
Yes.
But yeah, John Craven's News Round, it was really good, actually, News Round, because it really put the news into language that us kids could understand, wasn't it? It was our first delve into current affairs, news and politics and world events and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the news round still going? I mean, we're not the target audience anymore, are we?
I'd like to think this is kind of like a news round for our gazers.
It's exactly it.
It's a hark back to news in more digestible form.
Yeah, we don't really understand it either, gazers, but we'll just tell you what's on the bit of paper in front of us. On the 6th of April, Ford launches its new executive model, the Granada, available as a saloon, coupe or estate. Produced at the Dagenham plant. Here we are talking about cars again. A Ford Granada was one of those cars of the 70s, and the way the Escort was a car of the 80s, wasn't it? You really knew a Granada when you saw one. It was one of the big ones. Yeah,
we talk about cars and I just tend to glaze over, to be honest with you. I'm not very good. I've got a black car if anyone's interested. It's a black car and it goes and it rarely breaks down. That's all I need.
All you need to know.
On the 1st of June, hotels and boarding houses become required to obtain certification under the Fire Precautions Act of 1971, and this is in response to, on Boxing Day 1969, a fire at the Rose and Crown Hotel in Saffron Walden killed 11 people while 17 were rescued.
I mean, doesn't it speak again of this time before health and safety? And before 1971, you didn't have to have any kind of fire certification or anything like that. You could just do what you wanted. There was no, if you had a fire, get out. That's all you have to know. I'm surprised anyone survived any daily life. Minefield.
I mean, it is a bit overload these days, isn't it? But mind you, we're not dying in fires as much anymore, so I suppose every cloud.
Exactly, and we have to remember builders aren't being killed on building sites anymore, things like this, because people have done risk assessments, so I think they're probably quite a good thing. Although sometimes it's a bit stupid. I remember my old job when I used to have to take students on walking tours and stuff. We had to fill a risk assessment form, including things like crossing the road can be dangerous, and you have to put, for fuck's sake. Anyway, enough of my bile. On the 1st of September, the raising of school leaving age in England and Wales increases from 15 to 16 for pupils leaving school at the end of the academic year. So no more leaving school at 15, kids. You got to hang on another year. Could you imagine if you'd been looking forward to that if you were 15 and you suddenly you've got another year? You're back in September, you little shit. Come on.
I can't imagine leaving school at 15. I mean, I could barely formulate a sentence, never mind go out into the big wide world. I mean, I had Saturday jobs and stuff, but can you imagine Sorry, I just froze then.
Are you rebooting? Oh, switch him off and switch him back on, will you? He's gone. We've lost him.
I'm back. I'm back. Can you imagine leaving school at 15? I went on and did A-levels, then went to university and stuff. So, I mean, I was very fortunate to be able to do that. I just can't imagine going out into the big wide world. What would you do?
No. Yeah, but then remember, there was a lot of employment at this time, especially in the 60s. There's pretty much full employment for people leaving school at 15. So, and a decade later, it'd be very different because there's no jobs.
Okay, so let's have a look at some of the most popular films of 1972. Let's just have a little peruse of what was in cinemas at the time. So, Diamonds Are Forever, another Bond.
I don't think I've seen Diamonds Are Forever. Great soundtrack, bit of Burley Chassis. The Godfather is out this year. Never seen that either. Gosh.
I would suggest it for a chosen topic, but I don't know if I want to subject it to 3 hours of Marlon Brando. But speaking of all things mafia related, we've just started watching The Sopranos in our house. I mean, no one can tell us that we haven't got our finger on the pulse. Honestly. First released in 1999, but one of those things in the background on the box sets and thinking, shall we dip our toe into that? Did. Absolutely hooked.
Really?
Yeah, okay. Fiddler on the Roof.
Good. Never saw that either. What's he fiddling? Why is he on the roof?
It's not Rod Hull, is it?
Oh, God. Is he fixing the telly aerial? Oh, get him down. Be careful. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. Love that film.
Also, very, very controversial this year. A Ken Russell written and directed film, The Devils, is released. It's all about a Roman Catholic priest accused of witchcraft after possessions in Loudun in France.
I love The Devils. It's such a great film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really great. It's got a great cast. Derek Jarman's sets are mind-blowing. I can see why it was controversial, but God, it's a stunning piece of work. There's quite a lot of controversial films this year. We've got The Clockwork Orange is released, Straw Dogs is released. Both of those will cause a lot of controversy. We're seeing the new wave of cinema here, after the 60s, and there's some really, really good stuff. There's also a lot of shit as well. Have you seen how many TV spin-off movies there are this year?
Steptoe and Son. Please refer to our previous episode on Steptoe and Son. We've got Mutiny on the Buses, the movie. Please, Sir, Up the Chastity Belt. So, yeah, there's a lot of British TV going into film, isn't there? It was obviously quite a lucrative market.
Yeah, definitely. Man About the House will get its own film as well.
But special mention to not a TV spin-off, but a Clint Eastwood classic, Dirty Harry, was released in 1972. Yeah. Watched it the other night. It was on the TV. Love it, love it, love it.
Go ahead, punk. Make my day.
Well, do you? Do you feel lucky, punk?
Wow.
Just like that in a Yorkshire accent.
Wow, he's very versatile, Clint Eastwood, wasn't he? Should we have a little cross up the charts for the week of the 28th of May, 1972, the top 20?
Let's do it. Don't look at number one.
How many do you think you're going to know?
Probably not that many on this occasion. 1972, before we were both born.
Let's have a little looky.
Let's do it. Okay, number 20, Mary Had a Little Lamb by Wings. Going through a little fallow period there, were we, Paul?
Me and Julio, Down by the Schoolyard. Paul Simon at 19. What the hell is that
Is that
about?
me and Julio?
Me and Julio. Me and Julio. Oh, number 18. I'll leave you to say this one.
Doobie Dood and Doobie Dood and Doobie by Diana Ross.
Have you ever heard that song?
No.
I haven't either. Doobie Doob and Doobie Dood and Doobie. Lovely. Number 17. Take a Look Around. The Temptations. Means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Number 16, Sister Jane, New World. No, sorry, Sister Jane, or sorry, New World.
I know 15, A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum.
Number 14, Tumbling Dice, The Rolling Stones. Again, not one of their strongest, I would suggest.
Isn't Life Strange? The Moody Blues at number 13. Tell you what's strange about this chart is not knowing any of these bloody songs. That's what's strange. Oh, God, number 12.
Leeds United by Leeds United FC.
Is that a football song?
Probably done by some monotone Leeds United players.
Oh, for the days of Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle, please, and Diamond Knights. That's what we need in a football song.
World in Motion.
That's far too classy. Number 11 is The Move with California Man. Just Move.
Tumbleweed. Number 10, Come What May, Vicky Leandros.
I know Vicky Leandros because she represented, I think it was Luxembourg at Eurovision one year. That song, not a clue. Number 9 is Johnny Cash and the Evangel Temple Choir with A Thing Called Love. God almighty.
Number 8, Amazing Grace, Pipes and Drums, and the military band of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guard. Are you still with us? Stay with me. I need you.
He's flatline. We've lost him.
Oh,
We've
dear.
lost him. Number 7, David Cassidy. Could it be forever? / Cherish. Could it be forever with David? No, as it happens.
David Cassidy, was he a heartthrob at the time?
Yeah, he was. He was a big heartthrob.
Number 6, Lady Eleanor Lindisfarne. From your neck of the woods, isn't it?
From my neck of the woods. Yes, never forgiven for Fog on the Tyne abomination with Paul Gascoigne in the 90s, but we'll hurriedly draw a veil over that, please. Number 5, Don McLean is there with Vincent. Oh, that's about Van Gogh, isn't it? Isn't that Starry, Starry Night? Starry, Starry Night. Isn't it that one?
Number 4, Oh Babe, What Would You Say by Hurricane Smith.
What would you say?
I don't know what to say. If any of our gazers are still with us, got 3 more chances to know one of these songs.
Yeah.
What's at number 3, Lee?
At the Club, Saturday Night at the Movies, The Drifters. We know that one.
That's a good one. Yeah. Okay, classic coming up. Classic alert. Number 2, Rocket Man, Elton John.
Finally, one we know. Should we have a look at what's number 1? I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't get your hopes up.
Oh, bit of T-Rex, Metal Guru. That'll do.
Do you know what? I know instantly what that song is, but I didn't know it was called Metal Guru. I didn't know that's what he sung.
Really? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You've never stopped learning, darling. Never stop learning. Without further ado, let's cross ourselves over to Kit Kat Club and talk about Cabaret. Would you like to give us a bit of information, Dave?
I will. Cabaret is a 1972 American musical period drama film directed and choreographed by Bob Fosse. From the screenplay by J. Preston Allen, and it's based on the 1966 stage musical by John Kander, Fred Ebb and Joe Masteroff, which in turn was based on the 1951 play I Am a Camera by John Van Druten and the 1930 novel Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood. The movie Cabaret stars Liza Minelli, Christopher York, Helmut Graham, if that's the right pronunciation, Marissa Berenson and Joel Grey. Multiple numbers from the stage score were used for the film, which also featured 3 other songs by Kander and Ebb, including 2 written for the adaptation. So that's about it, really. It's a musical. It's called Cabaret, based on a stage play, based on a book. More importantly, Liza Minnelli.
Liza with a Z.
Okay, Lee, do you want to tell us briefly what the overall story of Cabaret, the movie, is?
It's 1931 Berlin, and Brian Roberts, a young, buttoned-up British academic, has just arrived in the city. He meets vivacious nightclub entertainer Sally Bowles, and the pair become initially friends before becoming lovers. The arrival of Max, rich playboy and baron, turns the relationship into a throuple. The fact that only becomes apparent when Max buggers off. Sally realises she's pregnant, and after realising a life of motherhood and domesticity is not for her, aborts the pregnancy, and Sally and Brian part company. There's iconic looks, iconic musical numbers, and a chilling, growing Nazi menace. Welcome and bienvenue.
So yes, that's the bones of it, isn't it? So we start the film, silent titles in black, and then we kind of hear the sound of band warming up, and then we come into the Kit Kat Club, Berlin, 1931. So this is 12 years after the First World War ended.
Yeah.
And it's a time of decadence in Berlin, which was well renowned for its wild nightlife. As most capital cities are, they're the kind of centre of the nightclub scene, the jazz scene. It's a scene of debauchery, free and easy times, carefree and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Different movie, but there you go.
Different musical, yeah.
So yeah, we're introduced to MC, aren't we? He's the MC of the club, basically. He's the compere, the host, and he sings Willkommen, Bienvenue, welcome.
Yes.
Introduces the club as somewhere to go where you can forget your troubles, anything goes, and you can be who you want to be. And this is interspersed with Brian, played by Michael York, who's a scholar from the UK, arrives in Berlin on the train, full of hope, full of dreams. The world is his oyster.
And very quickly, Brian appears like a fish out of water. You know, he's buttoned up, he's starched, he's stiff, he's very English, being thrust into this milieu of decadence and debauchery and One of the things the film is very keen to very quickly point out is that the glory days of the 20s are now on the skids and everybody's skint. There's been the 1929 stock market crash. Fritz is one of the characters that Brian meets, one of his students, because he's teaching English. He says everyone's broke, basically. So the glory days are gone, but here we have the Kit Kat Club. And we see a lot of stuff which is very transgressive. We see that there's lots of different gender and sexual flirtations. There's drag. There's other forms of cross-dressing. There's very erotically charged musical numbers. There are men on the street. Brian and Sally walk past who are clearly assignating for sex. There are thruples. So there's this whole kind of shebang, this very bohemian, this very arty, this very loose living. And as you rightly say, Berlin was kind of famous for it. And it was also famous for things like the Institute of Sexology, which was this almost like a university researching sex, homosexuality, trans issues. And there's years and years of research that gets destroyed by the Nazis in 1933. So it really was a place where you could feel like you could just go and let yourself go. But as we said, the Nazi menace is rising and it's peppered throughout it. But we'll come on to that, I'm sure.
So then we get introduced to, in the middle of all this, we get Sally Bowles, played by Liza Minelli, who is a performer in the Kit Kat Club. One of the first times we see her, she sings a song called Mine Hair, which is about a woman who's owning her sexuality. She's in charge of her own destiny. She uses men as playthings, and we feel as though she herself, Sally, is very much in charge of herself. She calls the shots. She's very magnetic. She illuminates the screen, doesn't she, Sally Bowles?
Yeah, she does. She really does. You can't not look at her. It's interesting, the first appearance of her. Did you notice, though? She's kind of like in one of the big numbers. She's in the background. She's on the back row. And I was quite surprised that that was the choice they made to introduce Sally, who's clearly going to be, you know, the big star of the picture. But I suppose it kind of goes in with the theme of this movie in that things get gradually revealed. So we learn that Fritz, Brian's friend, actually turns out to be Jewish. We get this gradual, really kind of chilling reveal of the rise of Nazism and how that's manifesting itself. So I was quite surprised. But back to Sally, I mean, she's just glorious, isn't she? The numbers, should we talk about the numbers? Because all of the music actually takes place within the Kit Kat Club. It's all diegetic, so it's within the actual entertainment space, apart from one other number. And the staging is just amazing, isn't it? And it's such a small space, and that gives it such an intimacy and immediacy. I mean, Fosse's choreography is on point. My God, those girls are fit. You know, the stuff they're doing on chairs and stuff is like, wow, they are trained. Just give me Liza looking fabulous, singing any number from Cabaret, and I'm happy as a pig in shit, you know?
Liza Minnelli actually won the Best Actress Academy Award for this role. And even though it's a story primarily about Brian, feels to me as though he's the main protagonist. He's our eyes into this world. He's our eyes onto Sally Bowles. And it is Liza who commands this film, isn't it?
God, absolutely. And I mean, I did find her quite annoying in a way that she's never really annoyed me before. She's a well-rounded character. You know, she's selfish, she's capricious, she's really egotistical. She's constantly talking about divine decadence is what she's constantly striving for.
Yes.
I mean, she's theatrical, she's over the top, you know, and there were some scenes in the first half of the film. Ironically, it's when she gets pregnant that I really started to feel for her. But I was just thinking, oh my God, I've met girls like Sally Bowles before, and for the first half hour, they're just like, oh my God, they're so fabulous. You know, she's so much fun. She's going to be best friend for life. And an hour later, like, oh God, shut up, Sally. Will you switch yourself off for a second, will you, love? But there's no getting away that she's just fabulous. The eyelashes are just, I mean, they're just like they've been stuck on, haven't they? Been painted on. And just like, oh, hello.
She is the kind of girl who'd have a really wild night with Sally Bowles. But as you say, you know, and then keep more at arm's length.
Yeah.
For fear of getting sucked up into her whirlwind of life. But also I thought they rounded her really well. There's this ongoing theme of talking about her father, and she presents this image of her father as somebody who adores her, who is devoted to her, who dotes on her, who, wherever she is in the world, her father will fly in to see her. But it pretty soon emerges that's all just a bit of a front, and her father hasn't given her the love faith and devotion that she feels that she's entitled to. And it's made her who she is. She's made her into this performer who craves attention because she didn't get it from her father. She reveals that as much later on down the line, doesn't she?
Yeah.
That she feels as though she wasn't good enough for him. She didn't make her mark in the world as he would have wanted her to. And that's why she's desperate to become a movie star. And it's all driven by this desire to be accepted and loved by her father.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an undercurrent of sadness in her character, for sure. The whole father stuff is handled really well. To find her quite annoying. And I know that, you'd have a great night with her and you'd wake up and she'd be on straight away immediately in the morning when you're really hungover. Like, Sally, shut up a second, Sally, will you?
Yeah, it made me kind of think that Sally Bowles is actually a gay man.
Well, I mean, there is a lot in that, actually.
Yeah, a lot of LGBTQ people go through this where they feel as though they have to escape the provinces, come to a big town, put on a certain kind of performance, a mask, an armour, a bravado, which can shield insecurities about not being accepted for who they are, etc. And I just feel as though that's why a lot of LGBTQ people can identify with Sally Bowles.
Yeah, and it's right. And the thing you were saying about, going to big cities and stuff to kind of try and find your true, authentic self. I mean, this is based, as you said earlier, on the novel by Christopher Isherwood, which documents his own experience of going to Berlin in 1929 because he wanted to pursue life as an openly gay man. And he knew that in Berlin you would be able to do that. And he wanted to enjoy the nightlife as well. And there he met... She was a British cabaret singer, an aspiring film actress from a wealthy Anglo-Scottish family who Sally's based on. Yeah, I think there's something in the whole Sally Bowles as a queer figure, I guess, because she does have a lot of commonalities, doesn't she, with the queer experience. So what do you think about Brian, then? Let's talk about Michael York. I can't work out if I fancy Michael York or not.
I really fancied him. And I remember watching him when I was a kid and thinking he's just quite luminous as well. And he just projects this image. First of all, he's a beautiful man and has got the most amazing lips I've seen on a man. He's just wonderful. I felt as though I could identify with him as well about wanting to kind of come to a big city and experience all it has to offer, as feeling like a fish out of water and absorbing everything. But also, I felt as though his sexuality was very fluid in a way. It was as though he was trying to work things out for himself. He said, Sally asked him at some point, have you been with women? Do you fancy women? Are you gay? And he says, I have been with women, but I've just never felt it. And now I just feel as though I don't really fancy anybody. So is he a straight man who's just not got it quite right yet? Is he asexual? Is he bisexual? Pansexual? What is he? His sexuality is really fluid. And then obviously he does get with Sally eventually throughout the midpoint of this movie, but then he flows quite freely in this threesome with this other man, doesn't he? This throuple. So, yeah, I mean, he was quite, even though he was, like you say, he was quite buttoned up, quite staid, his sexuality was quite fluid and he was quite ready to explore his sexuality as well, which I felt itself was quite liberating.
The one thing I loved about this film is both Sally and Brian really go on a journey and you can plot their character's journey quite easily. I mean, he starts stiff and starched and buttoned up, and Sally obviously changes his life and allows him to unbutton himself a bit, And the end of it, when they part each other's company, it felt kind of complete. The journey they'd gone on and what had happened to them was really kind of beautifully realised, I thought.
Yeah, what I thought was really beautiful about their relationship, they went through all these experiences together, but ultimately realised that they weren't right for each other and parted on really good terms. Yeah. Shook hands, hugged each other. To be able to say that, how many times have we left relationships and it's been acrimonious and everything, but in this instance they were able to say, okay, we're not for each other, but let's part as friends, see you around sometime, kind of thing. I thought that was really refreshing, actually, at the end.
Yeah, it was. It kind of felt true and it felt authentic as well. It didn't feel like it was, if they'd got together at the end, it would have been ridiculous. So I was really pleased that was the decision they took, and that's how they ended. And then, of course, Sally goes and sings Life is a Cabaret. Boom, cha-chum, huge applause. Oscar, please. Have you ever done Maybe This Time in a Kitchen Disco? That's one of my go-tos. Maybe this time I'll get lucky. Oh, my God, the amount of times that's been blasted out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, Leela Bowles on the sofa.
After too much gin. Yeah. I'm more of a cabaret man myself. And also, I think I've said this before on the podcast, I think I'd like Cabaret to be played at my funeral.
Yes, I mean, it's a great song, isn't it?
We've kind of deviated a little bit. I think what I'd like to talk about now and discuss the character of Max. So Sally meets Max in a dry cleaners. He is loaded. He's from German aristocracy. He's a baron, insanely good looking, in my opinion, and is immediately mesmerised by him and he by her. And it quickly escalates. You know, he takes her around, shows her the sights, buys her caviar, buys her jewellery, etc. And Brian's obviously going out with Sally at this point. He's kind of watching this relationship develop, becomes jealous of Max, but is also kind of swept up in this experience of the landed gentry, gets taken to his country pile, and then ultimately emerges that they both slept with this Max character. And this, to me, highlighted the class structure, where Sally and Brian were quite lower class, on the fringes of society, weren't they? And here was another guy who was very much upper class, and it was kind of like these meeting and this clash of classes. But it soon emerges, doesn't it, that Max is kind of using them as a plaything. He can quite easily pick people up because he's got power and wealth. People get hypnotised by him, and then ultimately, when he tires of them, he can dispose of them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does, doesn't he? He just drops them like a ton of bricks, leaves them 300 Deutschmark. Doesn't she say it's cheaper than a night with a hooker or something? Yeah, he's a baron, isn't he? So he's flash-hairy, quite the blondest moustache I've ever seen in my life. And you're right, he's just completely using them at his will and want. They are his playthings. He's bought them. He's bought Sally, basically. Sally doesn't come across very well in this whole scenario. I felt this is when you see the really acquisitive side of her. You know, it's born of desperation, obviously, because she's got no fucking money. She hasn't got a pot to piss in. But she was so easily swayed by him, wasn't she? But I thought he was a wrong un. As soon as I clocked him, I thought he was a wrong un.
I was completely taken in by him.
Oh, you'd have been all...
And again, I'm very fickle.
You would have been all Sally Bold all over, wouldn't you? Max and his tash.
Do what you want to me, Max.
Yeah. I'm yours to play with. Anyway, should we talk about the serious stuff, the Nazism that's depicted, the build-up of the Nazi dread in this film, which this film does so successfully? It reminded me of The Sound of Music quite a lot, and you get little hints of things going on. It's really well done, I think, the way that the threat builds up. You see initially there's a member of the SS collecting money for the Nazis in the club, and he gets kicked out, and then a group of Nazis then kick the shit out of the club's owner, the manager. At one point, there's a wounded guy with one leg missing, an older guy who was obviously from the First World War, in a wheelchair on the street with a Nazi flag on his. It's just little subtle things. But then you really get the sense when Brian and Max in the beer garden, and then you get a member of the Nazi youth stand up and sing a song called Tomorrow Belongs to Me. And the whole place it was chilling, actually. Everybody ends up getting up and singing the song, apart from one old guy who's sitting, who's obviously not into this. And then we start to see like a Nazi salute. There's overt anti-Semitism. You see Sally and Brian's landlord's rising anti-Semitism. Then the worst fucking thing, they killed the fucking dog. They killed Natalia's dog. Natalia's one of the characters, and I was absolutely horrified. There's a website actually called doesthedogdie.com, because people get so fucked off with seeing animals getting killed in films. And I was so angry. And then the final shot of the whole film, after Sally's done Life is a Cabaret, you pan over the reflection of the audience in the Kit Kat Club, and you realise there are so many Nazi members now in there sitting. You know, even over the MC says this is a place where anything's free, anything's easy. You even get the rising of anti-Semitism in that space as well. So there's that song, If You Could See Her Through My Eyes, when the MC's singing, and he's got one of the dancers dressed in a gorilla costume, dressed in a bridal outfit. The song talks about live and let live, if you could see what I love her. And the killer sting at the end of this song is that he turns and says, well, she's Jewish, obviously, you know, and that was the twist. And it was just like, it was horrible that it even infiltrated this space. I thought was so effective. And now I know why we watched it in GCSE history, but at the time, like, what are we watching this for? But yeah, what did you think how they handled all this Nazi stuff?
I thought they handled it really well, actually. I felt it was like an insidious creep. there was a presence there that you were aware of, but the main characters, weren't aware of. It felt as though they were portraying all these characters as sleepwalking into the rise of Nazism. All the warnings from history say to you, you don't pay attention to what's going on around you. This is what this insidious creep does. It comes in, and before you know it, it's too late to stop it. It's snowballed. It's kind of, and I don't want to allude too much to what's happening now, but if you look at the rise of the right wing and the right wing parties in Britain and America, it does feel as though we're sleepwalking into things again now.
Yeah.
Again, it's really interesting that the people who experienced the Second World War have, all but a small handful, died out. None of us have experienced the horrors of a world war. And it was really interesting to see it depicted in this film. There was a scene where Sally and Brian were walking down the road. It seems like quite an innocuous scene. They were just talking about their lives and things. But behind them on the wall, there was Nazi propaganda and communist propaganda at that time as well. But they didn't notice it or comment on it because it was just in the background and they were focused on their lives. So I thought that was really well handled. And then when things did start to escalate, you started to see people being beaten up on the street. There was one scene where a communist was being beaten up by a group of Nazis. And Max says to Brian, as they're watching from the car, these Nazis, they're no good, but they'll serve their purpose for now, because what they'll do is get rid of the communists, who were seen as a political force that weren't welcome in Germany. He said, the Nazis, they'll get rid of the communists, and then we'll just get rid of the Nazis. So there was that kind of flippancy within this aristocratic person, like, the Nazis are going to serve their purpose by getting rid of the communists, a little realising that actually the Nazis are going to rise to power and be in government pretty soon. So that was really interesting. But also I thought it was a really good take on the liberal mindset. This film focuses on the elites, focuses on the scholars, and it focuses on the artists and the people who are sexually liberated. All of these people, the elites, the scholars, the artists, sexually liberated, were all prime targets of the Nazis. That was really interesting, that this whole film is about how, you can forget your troubles, how you come to this place where anything goes, you can be who you want to be, and all the while, in the background, there was this malevolent force that was ultimately going to crush them all. For all its celebration and all its joy and all its music and all its dance, there was this black cloud hovering over. So I thought it was a very good warning to people. If anybody watches it now, just watch what's happening now compared to what was happening in early 30s Germany,
Well, yeah, absolutely. And we can really look to America, what's happening in America, more so than the UK at the moment, about how governments will go after academics and all those other groups you mentioned, because they don't want that kind of message or language out in the public arena, do they? Yeah, it's grim.
Well, we are celebrating Pride Month. We're coming to the tail end of Pride Month now. And if anybody out there tells you, we don't need Pride Months anymore, what do they need Pride Months for? It's reasons like this that we need to be out there. We need to be shouting that we're proud of who we are, especially in today's political climate. I think it's more important than ever.
Hear, hear.
We haven't really touched on the side plot, really, which we'll talk about just very briefly, Natalia and Fritz. So Fritz is this poor guy, hasn't got much money, and he courts Natalia, who comes from the landed classes, etc., and he really wants to be with her. She questions to Sally that, I don't know if he's right, class-wise, I don't know if my dad would accept him and stuff. And ultimately, I'm a Jew. And you can see what's happening in Germany at the moment. Who knows what's going to be happening in a year's time? Am I still going to be in Germany in a year's time? And the stinger is in the tale is that Fritz has told Natalia that he's Christian, where in fact he's actually a Jew as well. So that was quite a little tragic side story, but that ultimately ends in hope with them two, because they do get married, don't they? He confesses that he's a Jew too, and they get married. But then that's the last we see of them. So again, it's kind of open-ended as to what happened to those two people in the outbreak of the war. Did they manage to escape, or did they ultimately meet a hideous fate? So we don't know. But that was a really interesting side story as well. But then ultimately, we get the final song, don't we? Once Brian and Sally have parted ways, Cabaret. So it ends on quite a positive note until, like you say, the very last shot, where we look into the audience through this kind of opaque kind of glass, and all we see are Nazi armbands and things.
So, was this a problematic film?
I don't think so. I don't think through my queer eyes I saw anything problematic about it. I felt it was a really good celebration of sexuality and a really good warning about what can happen if you're too complacent.
I agree completely. I couldn't really see problematic elements of it. The characterizations are really good. No one's kind of shortchanged by the plot. So, yeah, I thought it was great. So, with all that being said, what would you rate Cabaret?
I think out of a lot of things we've seen, I got the most out of this film. And I think I would give it 9.5 false eyelashes out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I'll give it 9.5 feather boas out of 10. It was great. Would it be a 10? No, it would. If Sally hadn't been as annoying, it would have been a 10.
And perhaps if it had been a smidge shorter.
Yes,
it would have been a 10.
Yeah, it could have been a little bit shorter. Not to detract from its greatness, though, at all.
No, we're just nitpicking now, aren't we?
Nitpicking, love. Right, David, let's leave Berlin 1931 far behind and venture to our next topic. What's it going to be?
Well, as we emerge bleary-eyed out of Pride Month, we're going to go to the other extreme of representations of heterosexual masculinity. Or are we?
We are going to be looking at Top Gun. Yeah, we're bringing out the big hitters, kids. It's time this shit's getting serious. The Tom Cruise film from 1986. I've never seen it.
I've seen it when I was very, very young. But all I ever hear about it now is how it's kind of...
a little bit gay.
How it could be perceived to be a little bit gay. So, we shall get our gazer eyes on it.
Yeah, indeed we shall. And so let's bid a fond farewell to Pride Month. As you say, emerge bleary-eyed from the party. Hope you had fun, whatever you did. Right, Dave, I'm off to get me stockings and suspenders on and do a little number at the Kit Kat Club. What are you up to?
Well, I think I might join you, darling.
Oh.
We can have a Sally Bowles off.
Oh, I'd win.
I know you would.
I'd rip your fucking eyelashes off, love. Get me those back.
So all that remains to be said until next week, and Top Gun and bare-chested volleyball.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.